Welcome to the fourth and final video in the Data Center video series. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the previous three videos as they will provide helpful information to support this video. In the past videos, we learned about what data was available in the data center, how to navigate the data center, and we took a look at the different ways to visualize data on the data center. Now we can put all the pieces together to tell a story using data, one that we could use to advocate for our communities. So let's review these thoughtful steps in using data for storytelling. First up is connect. We know that data and data visualizations alone cannot change policy. The data need to be weaved together to tell a story. So consider the data you identified that you were interested in learning and make the connection between the data you have and the story it could tell. For example, what population are you focused on? What geographic location are you focused on? And what's the time frame of the data? For example, we looked at child poverty by poverty level in our previous videos. So maybe we're interested in building a story around the percentage of children living in poverty over the past 10 years in Illinois. This is how we connect the data together. Next, we need to contextualize the data. So when we review the data, is poverty changing over time? Is it increasing or decreasing? And consider social math. For example, why are about 1 in 6 children in Illinois living in poverty? This is also where we need to think about systems, policies, and programs that have been created or not created to reduce poverty over time. In addition, we need to think about the impact living in poverty will have on a child's present and future life. Children living in poverty may also be experiencing food insecurity, housing instability, and living in poverty now may affect their future health and educational outcomes. By contextualizing the data, we can start to understand the story the data is revealing. The next step is even more important. We need to disaggregate the data, which means to break down the data into groups by a characteristic, such as gender, race, ethnicity, and/or age group. Building on our example, we would want to know, has poverty reduced for all children at the same rate? Let's take a look. In this example, we know that poverty for children in Illinois was 16% in 2020. But when we disaggregate the data, we see higher rates of poverty for Black, Latinx, and children who identify as other races and ethnicities. This is why it's extremely important to disaggregate data when possible. When we disaggregate data, we find that there are disparities, and in our example, racial disparities, which means that some children are living in poverty at higher rates than others. When we disaggregate data and reveal disparities, we can root our story and advocacy in equity, especially race and gender equity. And we can build policy solutions that address poverty for children of color, which, as a result, will lower the poverty rate for all children across the state. So now that we have our data disaggregated, let's take a look at best practices for presenting that data visually. Here are a couple things to keep in mind when storytelling. First, avoid stigmatizing or contributing to harmful stereotypes when presenting data. You want to frame the data differences and any inequities about the system and not the people. Second, choose a title for your visualization that is a call to action. And you want to clearly label your chart. For example, on a bar chart, you want to label your x-axis and your y-axis. Also, when providing a chart, it's really important to include a key or legend to help explain the different colors or shapes you used in your data visualization. Lastly, it's important to name missing data and/or data categories that mask the details of a population, because data represents real people. So keeping this in mind, let's take a look at an example together. So putting these best practices into action from our previous example of child poverty by race and ethnicity, let's dig into that. But first, I want to flag that though the data center does provide great data visualizations, these visualizations are not always fully labeled. So it's super important to do that yourself. Now in our example, instead of the data center provided title, let's adjust the title. Let's make it anti-poverty policies must center race equity to decrease poverty for Illinois' children of color. The previous title only described the data on the bar chart, but this new title provides a call to action. Our title actually uses data in the chart to highlight the issue, which is racial disparities for child poverty rates. And the title gives direction to our audience on how to create a solution that is equitable for Illinois' children of color. Next, we should clearly label our X and Y axes. Our X axis is our horizontal axis, and this is our independent variable, or more simply, this is our cause or condition we are observing. So in this chart, our X axis would be child, race, and ethnicity, and the categories. And then for our y-axis, this is our vertical axis, and this is our dependent variable, or the effect. So the y-axis in this chart would be percent of children living in poverty. So this is the outcome of poverty based on our race and ethnicity categories. I also want to flag that we do have a legend provided by the data center on this chart, so we're good to go. And now to address missing data and data limitations. In Illinois, the Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander population is too small to report and be reliable, especially at the county level. But we know that children of this racial and ethnic identity live here. So let's acknowledge this group and highlight this as a data limitation. In addition, Asian is a commonly used racial and ethnic category, especially on the American Community Survey data, which is where this data is from. But we know that there's much diversity among our Asian community. So let's highlight this as a data limitation and uplift the need to explore the differences in poverty among different Asian racial and ethnic groups further. Applying these best practices and these steps will really help present your data clearly and strengthen your ability to tell a story with data. Now that we've covered how to tell a story with data, be sure to check out our Using Data to Tell a Story worksheet. And this will help you develop those storytelling skills. You can find that worksheet linked closely to this video series. I just want to thank you all again for joining us on this video series. Our hope is that these videos support you as you become a data expert and advocate for your community. As always, we are here to provide support, so please see my contact information, and thank you for your advocacy for children and families in Illinois.